What's going on, guys? This is Connor from the Dolphins Dive, and in today's video, we're going to be going over the top defensive coordinator candidates for the Miami Dolphins to replace Josh Boyer, who was recently fired. Before I get into today's video, though, could you please just subscribe to the channel? It would help it grow and mean a lot to me. But without further ado, we're going to hop right into the list of candidates. So this is just, I cooked up a quick little list of the top guys, in my opinion, or most likely to get hired by the Dolphins. So obviously, number one on the list, everybody's favorite candidate is going to be Vic Fangio. I tweeted today that if we hire Vic Fangio, we immediately become Super Bowl contenders because of how good the offense has been. And I think there's just so much more room for growth on the offensive side of the ball. If you get similar production from the defense, and you basically have a top 10 offense and defense, you're going to be one of the best teams in the entire league. And Vic Fangio will immediately turn the defense around. His scheme, his ability to use players, you know where you're getting from him. He's been coaching for so many years. He's coached so many good defenses, and he's got a lot to work with, especially with the healthy players coming back. So I think Vic Fangio takes the Dolphins to a whole new level. With some of these other defensive coordinators, you're hoping that they pan out, but you're not as confident with like a guy like Fangio because he's got that such a proven track record. So that's my number one guy, as well as majority of Dolphins fans. Next guy I have on this list, we also interviewed him, Sean Desai, also a disciple of Vic Fangio. He worked for him with the Broncos for a couple of years, I believe. Was it the Broncos or the Bears? I get them confused. I believe it was the Broncos. So forgive me if I was wrong. I have a whole video coming out on Sean Desai, but it's just a little. The teams are pretty similar, but I believe it was with the Broncos. So he learned under him for a couple of years. So before becoming defensive coordinator for. Scratch that. Sean Desai was defensive coordinator for the Bears. He was there with Vic Fangio when Vic Fangio was the DC before Vic Fangio became the head coach of the Broncos. I'm sorry, there's a lot of interlapping, but I got it right. But Desai, obviously a disciple of Fangio. There's many, many good words about him. You can hear more about that in the video I'm going to do. After today's video, there's going to be breakdowns on the top candidates I'm going to list out. So Desai is one of those guys. But a lot of glowing words from people in the media as well as his own players and other coaches. So Vic Fangio disciple, lots of good words about his work ethic and his level, attention to detail. So he's another top candidate in my eyes. Another guy I've written down here, Steve Wilks. If we do hire Steve Wilks, he's got a track record of running a 4-3, so that would lead to a change in the style of defense. I don't know if the Dolphins are looking to do that, but if we do, he's one of the top guys. I think ideally what we're looking for in a defensive coordinator is a guy who you can hire as DC and just set it in place. You like Mike McDaniel won't really have to worry about it. More of a head coach of the defense. Obviously, you want McDaniel to have full control of the locker room and have say in overall game planning, but you want a guy who's an expert in their fields. Steve Wilks kind of gives you that. Obviously, he's got a track record as a head coach as well. He might stay the Panthers head coach, but if he does get fired or they go a different direction, that's a potential option. Next I have on this list, I don't know how likely it is. Formerly coached for the Dolphins. He's got a track record. We interviewed him last year for our head coach job as well, Vance Joseph. I know a lot of fans probably do not want him. When we had him back with Adam Gase's rookie year, the defense was pretty solid. Obviously, ended up getting the head coaching job with the Broncos. Well-respected guy, obviously. He's a serious candidate, I think, for multiple teams. I think the Cardinals specifically interviewed him and were giving him a look. I wouldn't hate bringing him back. And obviously, the Cardinals' defense wasn't the best, but if you look at the Cardinals' personnel, it's pretty dog shit. Let's be real. Because I had a conversation with a friend today about D'Amico Ryans potentially, or whoever going potentially to Arizona. I think it was Brian Flores, sorry. And just looking at that defense, they have a couple pieces that are good, but that front seven is just not good. They don't have any top pass rushers or just interior guys that stand out to you. So he didn't have a lot to work with if you give him the pieces we have. He's been a DC for a long time in this league. He brings a veteran presence that you could invite and have him. I wouldn't honestly hate Vance Joseph. I just don't think it's likely just because of the track record with the organization. But maybe he'd be willing to, and that'd be awesome potentially if we don't get the guys we're aiming for. Next guy on the list is Ejiro Evero. Once again, a hot commodity in these head coaching searches. Could end up being a head coach for one of these teams. Was the defensive coordinator for the Broncos. Lots of Broncos ties between Fangio, Desai, Joseph, and Evero. Although I don't think Desai was actually with the Broncos. I'm just getting confused with the Bears. But we continue. Evero, obviously the DC for the Broncos. The Broncos defense for the majority part of the season was very good this year. Obviously they had some bad games, but when you consider how bad the offense was and how much they were on the field for, and their overall talent, obviously they have some pieces, but they lost Bradley Chubb, obviously, at the deadline. Dealing with some injuries as well. Obviously they had Surtain, and they had, I think he also got hurt, though. The linebacker from Ohio State, who's an absolute stud. I'm blanking on his name. But they had a couple pieces. But overall, that defense did very, very well with not necessarily the best players. Obviously, Justin Simmons is there as well. But he's a young, up-and-coming coach who I would be in favor of hiring. Situational as well. I ideally want a veteran guy who's got a proven track record, and someone that's not necessarily, because say we hire Evero and he continues his high level coaching like he has been, he's going to get hired as a head coach soon. And obviously that's a good thing. You want coaches that are good enough to get hired, but Vic Fangio, you kind of know. I don't know if he's really going to get another chance as a head coach. You know you're getting an elite defensive mind that's probably going to be with your squad for the time being. Next guy, also a 4-3 defense kind of guy, so you'd see turnover in the style of defense. And he's also the DC of the Bills, Leslie Frazier. I don't see it happening. It's a very, very light chance, but he's a guy who's been getting a lot of head coaching interviews, but not necessarily getting the job. Maybe he looks for a change of scenery to get the complete credit, because obviously he's with McDermott. Maybe McDermott gets a little more credit than he deserves, and Frazier wants to be the leader of his own guys. Not that he isn't already, but I highly doubt he even leaves the Bills. But there's been some speculation, and I've seen some Dolphins fans mentioning his name, so decided to throw him on the list. He'd be a great guy. He was a candidate for the Dolphins head coaching job last year as well. And this next guy, I think it's an absolute long shot. He just got fired from the Browns as their defensive coordinator, Joe Woods. The only reason I have him on this list is there's some familiarity between McDaniel and Joe Woods. If you go and watch the McDaniel presser before the Browns game, you see him mention Joe Woods and how he appreciated him involving the Y9 scheme with the famous Seattle cover 3 defense and combining those defenses, and you see the appreciation he had. They had a small overlap in San Francisco, so there's some familiarity there. And last but not least on this list, Anthony Campanelli just got announced earlier today that the Dolphins were interviewing him as a potential candidate for the defensive coordinator job. And Anthony Campanelli is a great candidate. Obviously, he's been in the organization since, I believe, 2019. Every time you hear one of his players talk about him, it's nothing but good words. Even his own press conferences, you like what he says. He's a funny guy. He's from New Jersey, which I appreciate as a fellow New Jerseyan. He's in a football family. I believe his dad coaches. His brother's a coach at Rutgers. So through and through football guy. He knows what he's doing. Obviously well respected in the building. My only concern is how is he going to make the defense better? Does he have enough experience? The thing with Campanelli, I feel like he's more of a high-risk, high-reward kind of guy. You might end up with someone who just lacks the experience as a defensive play caller to have success, and it ends up imploding and it doesn't work out. Or you end up with a guy that was meant for this job, does a phenomenal job, is creative in his own right, and obviously he's learned under Flores and he's learned under Boyer. I don't think he has much NFL experience beyond the Dolphins, so you hope that he's learned through his stops and is able to put his own touch on it, but you don't know fully what you're getting because he hasn't been a defensive coordinator before. He hasn't called plays before, so it's a little bit of a risk, but a guy that's well respected in the building, and that's kind of the culture McDaniel's going for. Is obviously he wants it all to be united, as to where it was before, where there's a lot of keeping people down. Campanelli's gonna uplift people, and is the kind of guy they're looking for, hence them interviewing him. So not necessarily, I like Campanelli a lot, and I think he could be a very good defensive coordinator, but for where the Dolphins are it's just a little risky. It's basically we would basically probably keep the same kind of defense if we're promoting him, because I don't necessarily expect him to come in and change a lot of things. It would probably just be the style that gets changed. Do we move to more of a zone team? Do we stay in the man-to-man coverage? Overall, I like Campanelli. Like I said, I love his press conferences. I love the fact he's from New Jersey. He's just a risky hire, and I'd prefer someone with a little more experience. Like, obviously, Vic Fangio is my top guy, but I'm going to list my top 3 candidates. And as well as that, like I said, there's going to be future videos on the channel where I break down each individual candidate. I'll keep making videos as long as the search is still going, but I plan on just doing the top guys as of now. So for right now, I plan on doing Vic Fangio, Sean Desai, maybe even Campanelli now with the whole interview process happening, and maybe as well as Ejiro Evero. So my top 3 candidates, I'm going to go 3-1. Number 3 is Sean Desai. I like the tree in which he's coming from. Obviously, the Vic Fangio. He's called plays before, although not having the most success. But he's claimed as being very detail-oriented, football guy, family guy, just a lot of good words about him. But he's also got some experience, and I like the tree in which he's from. Number 2, Ejiro Evero. I haven't done the most research on him, but I like what I've seen from the Broncos defense. Young, up-and-coming guy. There's a reason he's a head coaching candidate among the league. And he's a guy that would run a similar system in terms of the personnel. We wouldn't need to have a whole personnel haul over, but we would see defensive changes. And last but not least, number 1, and he's number 1 for every single Dolphins fan, Vic Fangio. He would be a home run hire. Like I said, I think he takes the Dolphins to, if we hire him, we immediately become Super Bowl contenders because of the defensive play that we will get, along with the offensive play already established with, I think there's so much room to grow for the offense. So I think that'd be a slam dunk hire. But that's going to be it for today's video. Please subscribe. It means a lot to me. Check out the DolphinsDive.com for dope Dolphins merch. And until next time, I'm going to catch y'all.